What is good, all of our listeners and viewers? Welcome to another episode of Games and Groceries. My name is Adam.
And I'm Liz.
And we've got this brand new theme song. So welcome to the show. We are going to be talking about the importance of gaming music with our special guest, Voltz Supreme. So, Liz, how you doing?
I'm good.
You like our new theme song?
I love it.
Yeah. It's really good. It's actually composed by our guest today, Voltz Supreme, who is actually the composer behind the game Adam's Ascending.
Nice.
So we had on the game developer, Nick DiPaolo, on the show, and now we have the composer behind Adam's Ascending. So we're looking forward to talking with him about a little bit about his life in Australia and how he got into the gaming music scene. So that's really cool. So super excited about that.
Super excited.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's just get this show started because we got a lot to talk about. We're going to go into the top 3 gaming news. No movie minutes this week because we have more time for our guest. But let's talk about the top 3 gaming news. But before we get there, we want to remind all of you to check us out on social media. You can check us out on Twitter at Gaming Groceries or follow us individually. I'm at Ace the Grocer.
And I'm at Journeyverse.
So follow us individually and be friends with us there. And, tweet at us. Say that, Adam, I really like the Phillies too. You're my buddy. But you can also check us out on Instagram, Games and Groceries, all one word, where you can check out behind-the-scenes photos, little gaming memes I put up every now and again, and as well as Question of the Week, where I put up every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you have until Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that way we will use your answers for our Question of the Week video, which airs on Wednesdays on our YouTube channel. And you can check out our website, gamesandgroceries.com, where you can check out all of the episodes from the website, as well as find out where you can listen to the audio versions of the website. And finally, I promise you, it's finally. But if you're watching us on YouTube, consider hitting that subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so that you know when all these episodes come out on your YouTube channel. And if you get through the whole episode, and if you really enjoyed it, consider giving a like and also a share with somebody who will enjoy these episodes. And finally, if you're listening to us on audio version, definitely subscribe to us on the iTunes, as well as give us a review and a 9-star rating, and so that we know how we're doing. We doing good? I hope we're doing good. So let's just jump into our first segment.
Top 3 Gaming News.
The top 3 gaming news is gaming news that we saw in the past week, and we like to rate it 3, 2, 1, just to give you a condensed version of what's going on in the gaming industry. And wow, was it a big week for 2 news pieces, but we have a number 3 gaming news for you that didn't get a lot of coverage. So
yeah,
let's start with that. With the number 3 gaming news, and that is Ubisoft actually is releasing a free game on the PC, I believe just Windows. It might be just for PC or just Windows 10. I don't know. But it is called Rabbids Coding. Our dog is on the table.
Floki, get off. Off.
Okay.
My goodness.
There we go. It is called Rabbids Coding to teach kids coding skills. So amidst all the whole microtransactions, kind of loot box discussion about Ubisoft and the whole, what do you call it? Just single player, fast paced microtransactions. They're kind of in deep water here. But on that note, in the midst of all this, they are releasing a 32 level puzzle game starring, of course, the Rabbids, as we all know from the Ubisoft titles. But this puzzle game, to get them on their spaceships and whatnot, you actually have to put in little coding commands. So it's actually teaching kids how to condense their codes and what lines go where. And you have to put in these coding commands to actually complete each puzzle, which is awesome. And this is actually going into the edutainments that they have. Of course, the first we heard about was the Assassin's Creed tours, where you get to tour Egypt, and I believe it was also on Odyssey. Wasn't sure about that one, but it's part of the edutainments movement that they have. And I have a quote from game director Oliver Palmieri, I hope I said his name right, who says this: We strongly believe that video games can play an important role in learning new technical skills, and we're looking forward to sharing Rabbids coding as a teaching tool for all ages, said game director Oliver Palmieri in a press statement. So, Liz, what's your take on this?
I want to play.
You want to? Well, it's only for kids.
It said all ages.
For kids.
It said for all ages. It didn't say kids of all ages. It said for all ages.
Well, these have to do with rabbits, and tricks is for kids, which also involves a rabbit.
But you can learn coding at any point in time. I actually had a class that I had to learn coding for in college, but I forgot how to do all the coding. So, but it sounds really interesting, and I think it's a good idea to teach these kids coding when they're younger so that they have the ability to have, like, that's an option for them when they get to college and going into careers and stuff. That's a good skill to have these days.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a very fine movement by Ubisoft to say that we want to think about the kids' futures here. I was actually talking to one of my students, well, soon to be former, because, but you know, like, I'm hanging out with a lot of my students before I leave. And I was like saying to one of them, do you ever think about game design? And he's like saying, well, you know, there's a lot of game designers already. I'm like, well, how old are you now? 15? If you're 15, usually you don't get like a full-time job until you're 22. That's 7 years.
Yeah.
The game designers now, in 7 years, might be looking to retirement or have moved up in the company to management. Guess what? No new coders are needed.
That's almost like saying, like, oh, I'm not going to do this because there's already enough people doing that, like nursing and teaching and like any job. There's already people doing a lot of jobs, but by the time you're ready to do it, that means someone else is ready to move on. Exactly.
And that's what I mean. Like, this whole game is setting up the future of video games too, because you get one kid who really, really likes this game, and he starts to understand coding.
Yeah.
I tried to learn coding myself when trying to design a game, and coding was actually my favorite part.
Oh, yeah. Coding is really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed coding more than level design or anything like that. Coding was really cool to learn, but yeah, I'm really excited for this game to be put into the hands of the young generation, the next generation of game designers. So really cool by Ubisoft's part.
I just want to put in something funny that I always think about is that when we were younger, we had MySpace teach us how to code.
We did?
Yes, because you remember how you would edit your thing? That's coding. We would copy and paste, but that was coding.
Yeah, but it's copy and paste. It didn't really teach you how to code.
But you could change it, and you had to go around the code when you changed like the words on your profile. I'm just saying. Yeah,
I see what you mean, but that's like saying that Watch Dogs teaches kids how to hack.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I always think that's funny how like.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
I guess Yeah, tell us in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Did MySpace teach you how to at least web design? That might be cool to hear.
Yeah, I think that'd be a cool story. Anyway, we can move on. I just wanted to put that in since it was kind of on subject.
No, totally. But yeah, that's a small subject. But we want to get to the big news. There's two of them. But let's start with number 2. And the PlayStation 5 has officially been announced for holiday 2020. I was shook. I was shooken by this news.
Yeah, okay.
They said the name.
I'm going to take your hat off.
They said the name was PlayStation 5. Who would have thought that?
Did they really make that announcement like it's going to be called?
Yeah, like they said that.
Wow, well, we had the first PlayStation, and we had PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4.
Even in the article, they said they're not sure what they're going to call the controller, as if it's not going to be called DualShock 5.
That's stupid.
Like, oh, we don't have a name for it yet.
Silly Sony.
And I'm just like, okay, whatever. But yes, the PlayStation 5 has officially been announced for holiday 2020. No shock. Like, I'm not shocked at all. Everybody saw this coming, and that's when the next Xbox is going to drop.
Oh yeah.
What the name of that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's talk about this for a little bit. So, Wired actually got a deep look into this, and I want to talk about this article real quick. In fact, let me pull up the article actually as we talk about it, because I only have a snippet of it. Oh, I don't have any internet. Hey, but yeah. So Wired once again took a deep dive, and we got the wired look the first time when Mark Cerny was interviewing.
Yeah.
With them, and we got a little bit of a deeper look, and he clarifies ray tracing. The dog is standing right here. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's our dog. His name's Floki. But Cerny goes on to say that with ray tracing, he's like, whoa, I wanted to clarify. There's actually ray tracing acceleration, not necessarily ray tracing. Now, I'm not the expert in ray tracing or even PC specs or anything like that. But from what I understand about ray tracing is that this isn't a new technology at all. This isn't new. In fact, most movies, most animated movies use ray tracing, which is to track light onto different objects so that it looks more lifelike. It all has to do with the light rays and everything. Now, ray tracing acceleration, this is what I was confused about. If you have a GPU inside the PlayStation 5 that has full-on ray tracing, you're talking about a real expensive system here. But because ray tracing acceleration, which what it is, it actually has less rays, but in multiple different directions. I tried to research what acceleration was, but essentially what it is the console version of it, right? So just like when we had 4K come to systems like Xbox One S, it's not native 4K, it does checkerboarding. Yeah. And it just fills in the gaps to make you think it looks like 4K, whereas the Xbox One X had native 4K. Yeah. And all you PC players who are listening to this are saying, native 4K? Ha! Anyways, but so this is going to be basically the checkerboarding of ray tracing. I might be wrong. I could be wrong. So one of the interesting things was the solid state drive. Right now, let me bring up my quote that I really liked about this article, and it's talking about the storage within the actual system. Now, the storage, of course, we're all worried about because games get bigger and bigger and bigger, and soon we're going to need 3 terabytes on the base system. But I think this is actually pretty interesting, so I'm going to read this whole quote right here about game installation. However, game installation, which is mandatory given the speed difference between the SSD and the optical drive, will be a bit different than in a PS4. This time around, aided in part by simplified game data possible with the SSD. Sony is changing its approach to storage, making for a more configurable installation and removal process. Now, here's where we get into the interesting part. Rather than treating games like a big block of data, Cerny says, this is Mark Cerny, of course, being the head architect behind the PS5, we're allowing finer grained access to the data. That could mean the ability to just install a game's multiplayer campaign and leaving the single player campaign for another time, or just installing the whole thing and then deleting the single player campaign once you've finished. Very awesome. Your thoughts?
That is definitely cool. And I think that's very useful because then it will help save space when you're done the main storyline and you don't feel, and you're not going to feel the need to play it for the foreseeable future. Yeah. You can take that out like your Assassin's Creed games.
Yeah.
Instead of deleting the entire game, you just get rid of the storyline,
right?
Part, or whatever. That's probably not exactly it, but it's a cool concept, and I think that's a good idea.
I think that's what's going to solve the whole games are getting bigger, but hard drives aren't getting any bigger problem.
Yeah. So it's not that they're making the hard drive bigger; it's that they're making it.
It's optional for you to delete sections of the game.
Yeah.
To only play the multiplayer. I hope you can also just have the single player and not the multiplayer. I think that's what he's going off of.
I think that's what he's saying, yeah.
So that's actually really cool. So I think that's a clever little trick just to save storage space as games get bigger and bigger and bigger. What game did I just install on my Xbox? And I was like, that's a ridiculous amount. Well, of course, Red Dead Redemption 2, that was 100... I think it was 108 gigabytes, if I remember right.
That was 106.
Yeah, 106, 108.
It was big.
Yeah, it's massive. But yeah, talking about also the controllers, this is also something I'm a little bit excited about. Now, I want to talk about the motor, the rumble within the controller. I'm not super impressed with, okay? Because they're trying to make it into like, oh, it's this great thing, haptic feedback in controls. Haptic feedback isn't really new. In fact, it's been in your iPhone. I believe the Switch, the Switch Joy-Con have haptic feedback. In fact, in the Xbox One controller, some controllers have haptic feedback within the triggers, which is awesome. But that isn't what's impressing me. It's really cool. It's awesome. I love haptic feedback more than just your like little rumble. So that's awesome within the whole controller. It's the adaptive triggers that I'm most impressed about. Did you read this article a little?
No.
Okay. Well, if you're listening to this or watching this, I will have the article linked down below if it interests you. Very awesome read. So we're just going through the highlights because we want to give more time for our guest. But in fact, wow, I'm really taking up a lot of time here. But the adaptive triggers, developers can actually use this in the development of their game to actually build tension within the triggers.
Cool.
So if you are pulling back a bow, they can actually...
it can tighten.
Yeah, it can tighten the tension.
That's cool.
And when you're driving a game, right? Like when you're in a driving game, when you put up the acceleration, if you're on mud, it'll actually like...
slip out.
Yeah, it will slip out.
Cool.
So it's actually adaptive. Wolfden Live actually gave a really good point about this. I believe it was Will Wolf. What's up, man? He's not listening to this episode.
You don't know that.
I don't know that. If Will Wolf, if you're listening, email me, hit me up, slide in my DMs. But
creepy.
I am creepy. But he made a good point to say that he doesn't think that most developers would take advantage of these adaptive triggers because of multi-platform. Because if Xbox doesn't have these adaptive triggers, they might not be so inclined. But PlayStation exclusives, you can bet your bottom dollar, and you can also bet your butt.
Thanks. We all needed that clarification.
Yeah, your tushy. That they will be like Last of Us Part 2. I like how they say shooting a bow and arrow. What PlayStation exclusive has a bow and arrow? Oh yeah, Last of Us 2. But, so, you think it's cool?
Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of other things that they brought up in this article, including the removal installs, the improved UI, so that's really needed. But keep this in mind. Take this with a grain of salt, and not to say... I shouldn't be saying take it with a grain of salt because it's pretty much proven. USB-C, awesome. Thank the Lord. It has a larger capacity battery in the controller. This is great. Again, link down below. But this is a sales pitch. Okay? They're going to throw all these technical jargons at you to make sure that you buy the PlayStation 5. It's here. It's got haptic feedback. It's got adaptive triggers. It's got SSDs and ray tracing acceleration.
It's got tings.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't take this to say that this is going to revolutionize. I need to buy this day one. We're a gaming channel. I'm not even planning to buy this or even the next Xbox One or whatever it's going to be called. At least for 6 months afterwards, because you're essentially a guinea pig in mass production. They have the testing, they have the dev kits, they think they know how it works, but you're pretty much the test dummies here.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt or not, whatever the statement is. But let's move on to our number one gaming. Oh, any other thoughts before we move on?
No, I think we should move on.
Yeah. Because the number one, we're not going to get too far into this. Blizzard bans Hearthstone player Blitz Chung after he was involved in support, after he showed support for the Hong Kong protests. Now, the Hong Kong protests that are being that are going on right now is the democratic Well, it's not the Democratic. What's going on is that Hong Kong does not want mainland China's communist government getting into Hong Kong's democracy. They're trying to fight for their government so that they are not, they don't have these communist overlords taking down their people. Now, pro player Blitzchung during a live stream, an official Blizzard live stream of Hearthstone, in a post-game interview, basically, the interviewers who were in on it, by the way, they asked him in Mandarin, and this is all in Mandarin, but they asked him, do you have anything to say? And Blitzchung said, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our times." And Blizzard bans him, not only bans him, but takes away his prize money, $10,000 of prize money.
Goodness.
Not only that, but bans him from any kind of competition for a year.
Wow. Because
he wants freedom for his people.
Yeah.
So, Blizzard banned him for this, and the reason behind this is that in an announcement released Tuesday, I'm going to read this quote here from the article, linked down below from NPR. In an announcement released Tuesday, Blizzard Entertainment said the player's statement violated a tournament rule that prohibits any acts that brings you into public disrepute, offends a portion or a group of public, or otherwise damages Blizzard's image. Sick. I don't think that means the.
I don't think so.
I thought he was like a gnarly bro, like sick bro. Anyways, so I do understand where Blizzard is coming from.
Oh yeah.
That okay, if it does go into public disrepute, fine. Like maybe fine him like the NFL does or the NBA does. You know, take away a portion, but to ban him and take away all of his prize money.
Yeah.
And to pretty much just censor this guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit extreme.
It is a bit extreme. And since it is his people, like it's not like he's an outsider.
Yeah, he lives in Hong Kong.
Yeah, so it's where he lives. It's not like he's an American commenting on something he knows nothing about.
Exactly.
You know, it's something that directly affects him. And he probably honestly didn't even think about it. He probably was asked a question and he answered it.
Yeah.
You know, he probably didn't even...
No, the interviewers were in on it. They egged him on to say it.
Okay.
But he believes in it. He wore the gas mask and the dark glasses as protesters would do because mainland China and the Hong Kong government are actually like throwing gas bombs at these protesters. So he's putting on the gas mask.
Okay, I didn't know all that.
No. Yeah, they were in on it. And actually they were fired too, the interviewers. The announcers for it all. Now, many people are outraged. They're outright boycotting it. There was actually a walkout by Blizzard employees.
Wow.
So this is actually becoming extreme. Okay, Blizzard, what you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I mean, like I said, I understand on all parts. Like, I understand his position. I understand that Blizzard kind of has to. It's in their own rules.
Sure, yeah.
If they didn't enforce them, it's like, why have them? And it's kind of welcoming other people.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
Now, someone just said, I want to look in my, hey, look at that, PS5 rumors. This is on episode 24, by the way. I'm looking back in my notes because someone said that this is actually just about over a year since the Diablo Immortal reveal. And that's where remember Diablo Immortal?
Is that the mobile game?
Yeah. Don't you all have phones? That was almost a year ago.
It's like they have a time of year.
Yeah.
Like it's, that's time of year. It's Blizzard's time to say something stupid.
I was just like, my goodness. Like, so.
That was funny. They're
all outraged. This is censorship for Hong Kong, man.
Yeah.
Like this is kind of the way these people live. Now I understand. Okay, I'm not about to get political here, But I understand that we live in time with our president, by the way, but, blah, blah, blah. He's starting to dictate us, yada, yada. Okay, fine, be that way. But look at what's happening in Hong Kong. Look at what's happening in mainland China, where it's actually living in that kind of communist system, that kind of communist regime, where all you have to say is, I don't want my city to be, in a communist regime, and you get plastered, you get gas bombed, you get... that's deadly, man. And you can't even use video games to spread a message to say, liberate Hong Kong from this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of messed up. Yeah. It's thank goodness that I'm not a Blizzard fanboy about this. If this was Bethesda doing all this, I'd be in some hot water. But people are actually like...
You've had your turn this year.
I have had my turn, but not like this. Blizzard
not
is
this
just
bad.
Man, Blizzard. But anyways, people are actually boycotting it. They are actually canceling their pre-orders of their Overwatch on Switch.
Wow.
They're straight up telling Blizzard, you're not okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's all we really need to say about this before, I get in some serious trouble in politics. Want to remind all of our listeners, we are registered Green Party. We voted Jill Stein. Greenpeace. So save the trees, y'all.
Jeez.
We're really just outsiders looking in.
Yeah.
I don't really care. In fact, we actually had a whole episode about being an apolitical gamer with Mr. Matty Plays. So if you're interested in that, check out, our backlog with Mr. Matty Plays. But we actually have an awesome guest today.
Yeah.
Amazing guest from the great country of Australia. And by great, I mean you get kicked in the face.
Terrifying.
You get kicked in the face by a pterodactyl, probably.
What?
We don't know.
I think we do know.
Well, maybe we'll ask him. What's it like to live with pterodactyls?
No.
Okay. Well, from the great country and continent of Australia, we have, of course, the composer behind the upcoming game, Adam's Ascending, which was shown off at E3. We have the great composer, Mr. Voltz Supreme. If you enjoyed that little ditty, that little new intro, that was all Voltz Supreme. So without further ado, let's just bring him on. Let's get our guest out here, Mr. Voltz Supreme.
It's interview time.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We have our guest who actually designed the new intro that you heard, that like with the whole beep boop bop, but it's so much more complex than that. I don't want to give him any less credit, but here we have Voltz Supreme. Voltz, welcome to the show.
G'day, fellas and Sheilas. How you going?
Voltz, of course, is from the great country of Australia. So can we call you Voltz, or do you prefer another name?
Yeah, call me Voltz. That's fine. My name's Joel, but I go by Voltz in this musical world. So
right on.
Yeah.
But of course, Voltz is a music composer. We're going to be talking more about that in our Talking Time section, talking all about why music is important in games. But first, we would like to get to know you a little bit better, Mr. Voltz, or Joel, or whatever we're going to call you in this podcast. So we have a set of questions we want to ask you just for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. I'm going to start off with the great question. We, of course, have the understanding that you're from the great country of Australia. However, I need to know, what does it feel like to live among animals whose sole purpose is to harm you?
Every day is terrifying.
Really?
Yeah, you take a step out of your house and you don't know if it could be your last day living or not. But it's everyone overseas always talks about the spiders, the snakes, the great white sharks, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you don't really think about it. I think when my kids were little, that like just crawling around, you do get a little bit worried because they're going to pick up a spider and just eat it because they don't know what it is. But generally, unless you're on a farm or something, you don't worry about snakes and spiders and that kind of thing.
Dang.
So yeah,
it's just kind of like a way of living.
It's a lovely place to live.
What's the most?
Pardon?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, it's like the way you live. That's about it.
That's correct. Yeah.
What's the most dangerous animal you've ever like come across within 20 feet? What's the most dangerous animal you ever encountered?
Wild koalas are pretty out there. Like they can just tear you to shreds in an instant.
Koalas can tear you to shreds?
Koalas are like vicious.
Dang. And that's the thing. They're known as so cuddly, but if you ask any Australian, it's like, no, you stay away from them. You better.
Yeah. I think
better get away.
If you go on the internet and you search up some angry koala pictures, it's
terrifying.
Really?
They look quite horrifying.
I mean, they are bears, right? So
yeah,
they're nuts. They're just tiny bears, but they're ready to pounce. My goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Liz, you want to bring us the second question?
Yeah. So, how do you combine your love of music and your love of games into a career?
Well, I grew up playing games, as most people our age do, and I also grew up writing music, recording music from a pretty young age. So, as I got older, it just made sense. Like I often found myself listening to music from films and games more often than I did with, I don't know what you'd call it, pop music or, like normal albums and that kind of thing. So, it's something that I desire to do. So,
just like a natural thing that happens.
Just what I want to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say your favorite gaming soundtrack is?
Favorite gaming soundtrack. My favorite gaming composer, and probably one of my favorite composers in general, is Masashi Hamauzu. He is, I don't think he's super popular, but
and name sounds familiar. What game did he design?
Probably his most famous soundtrack was Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
One of the most unpopular Final Fantasy games. But his soundtracks are amazing. So I don't know, if I had to say something, Final Fantasy 13 was my gateway into all his music. So that's a pretty good soundtrack.
Dang. I mean, yeah, it's just like I love what you say that like people like us, people our age, we grew up with games and you already have this phenomenal musical talent. Again, listeners, if you listen to that new intro, all composed by Voltz here. He does way more. He's actually going to be composing.
All the beeps and boops.
What's that?
All the beeps and boops.
All the beeps and boops. He's also going to be the composer for Adam's Ascending, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. But I actually want to ask you, since we're talking about music, you're also a Christian, like us on the show. So I wanted to ask you, knowing this, I've once actually heard the phrase, "There's no such thing as Christian music, only Christian lyrics." And I want to get, like, what's your take on this phrase? I think that's mostly true. When we sing worship music or hymns and stuff, what I've found, like when I was younger, I thought, we need to make these songs more interesting. You got to give them more interesting melodies and use all different instruments. Let's bring some synthesizers into church or something like that. Yeah.
But what I've found is, especially recently, we sing at the church I go to now fairly traditional songs. And I noticed that the music is pretty basic. And a lot of the hymns are very basic, but the lyrics are really powerful. And I found that having that simplicity in the music helps you. Well, for one, it helps everyone pick it up really quickly. Yeah. Everyone can sing along, and you almost know what note's going to come next because it's so obvious. But I think lyrics is the biggest thing. If we're just talking about music in general, I would like, for me, there's instrumental music that I won't listen to. If we're talking, the opposite of Christian music, there's some really good albums out there that have been made from people who are in the occult and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's no lyrics or anything on there. But I won't listen to that, kind of just out of principle, because if I'm serving God and that kind of thing, why would I be celebrating this other evil kind of stuff? So
it's the intention behind it. Yeah. And interesting. And I've always thought about that phrase too. And like what you said, sometimes music is super basic, but the lyrics are just so powerful. Coming from a band, like we did Christian deathcore music, and I always thought about, I know everybody's like, Christian deathcore? We called it lightcore. But it really is. It's kind of like there's no such thing as Christian music, because like what you said, synthesizers, a lot of times I'll listen to synthwave and it can be a little bit I don't even know what the phrase is, but it's just music. But it's the lyrics behind it, it's the intention behind it, or even like what you said, just instrumental music. It's the intention behind the music, I guess you can say, more than anything. Good thoughts, yeah. Liz, you also have a fun question for us.
Yeah, fun question time.
Yeah.
Does it aggravate you that Nick DiPaolo of Adams Ascending always has a tight Does it always aggravate you that Nick DiPaolo of Adams Ascending always has tight deadlines for you to get music done for big events?
No, not at all.
No.
It's good being thrown into situations where you've got a deadline. Like, it can be a little bit scary, because generally when I write music, I'll do the majority of the song in a short amount of time, and then it sits in the hard drive for about 2 years until I actually finally get it all together and just put it out there.
Yeah.
But with these trailers that we did, being a musician, you're at the end of the line, so I'm waiting for them to get their parts done before I can really start doing the music, just because this music is it's very specific to what's happening in the images, rather than just like when we're making music for the actual game, he'll just say, this is the feeling I want from the level, and this is the story behind this scene, and then I can just go write some background music pretty easily. But when you're locking to events on the screen, it's you gotta wait till everything's done, and then that's usually you've got a short amount of time to do it. But it's all good, it's all fun, and feel good when you finally get it all locked in. And
would you say Nick DiPaolo is a good person to work with? I mean, he's not going to be listening to this episode at all. You can
not
be
at all
100% honest. Would you say he's a good person to work with, or?
Yeah, I think we relate to each other in a number of different ways. So we're kind of on the same have the same line of thinking when it comes to certain things. So for us to work together, things seem to happen pretty naturally. And he's really chilled and thankful for like anything that I do. So it's been great working with him. So hopefully that game will all be done by the end of next year.
Yeah.
I mean, having him on, it was just like super awesome, just getting to talk about the game, and even talking to you about composing the game as we get into talking points. But it seems like it's going to be one of those games that's super special, both musically and gameplay alike. And I like how you two mesh together. And just to let you know, when I was talking to Nick about like, hey man, what should I ask Voltz? He's like, man, I'm so glad you're having him on the show. He's like this amazing composer. He's got a great work ethic. So he had great things to say about you too. So, but seems like a really good guy. But yeah, I want to bring it into the final question and about your work ethic. And it can be kind of a leap of faith to make music your career. Kind of would you describe yourself as a freelance musician?
Yes. So I still have a full-time job. And
okay.
I try to dedicate at least one day a week to just writing music. And then depending on what music work I've got going on, then I might work a bit harder during the week.
Yeah.
But it's a big balancing act because, you know, I've got a family, I've got a job, and growing this composing business as well.
Yeah.
So sorry, I think I interrupted your question.
No. That's actually a good segue into my final question, because like you said, there's a lot of things you have to worry about. You have your full-time job, you have your family. Do you have one kid or two, do you say?
Yeah, got two.
Two kids.
So 3 and 5 year olds.
Man, and there's a lot to balance there. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that want to make music a career, but they're scared to. And I want to ask you, for someone who's pursuing it very well, succeeding in it, I want to ask you, what advice would you give to somebody who is having doubts about making music their full-time career, or just a career in general?
Well, I think my personal advice, it's not really advice, but it's best to get it out of the way as young as possible, really. Like when the more responsibilities you start piling into your life, the harder it is going to be to kick things off, you know, like that. Generally, I think if you want to be a composer, you need another job, and then hopefully in the future, if your composing is going well, then things can transition.
Yeah.
But I would point anyone interested in business side of music to some podcasts. So there's a podcast called Composer Code.
Composer Code.
And yeah, I'll send links and stuff. So Composer Code, and I don't think that is running anymore, but there's lots of really good reviews on that. And then another podcast is Stephen Melin. So it's Stephen Melin, and his podcast is brilliant, really. Like, I've learned heaps from listening to him.
Yeah.
Regarding the music side of things, the music and business side of things. So yeah, they're two great podcasts, and you'd learn a lot more from them than you would from me. Yeah. So go there.
Yeah. Which I will have, if you're either watching this on YouTube or on audio versions, I will have those two linked down below if you want to check them out. You said Composer Code and Steve Melin?
Melin, yeah.
Melin. Melin.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. But I will.
Steve Melin. He does music full time, and he's got something like 5 or 6 kids, and
oh my goodness,
he's pretty young.
Yeah.
So he's got lots of advice. His whole thing is basically balancing family and being a full-time composer. So it's it's really good stuff.
Man, cool.
But just like what Voltz said, Joel, just like what Joel said, definitely look to pursuing it. But as he said, you're going to need a full-time job. We still work jobs, even on the podcast. This isn't our full-time career yet. But that's the thing. You can't just lack it behind, but you can't even lack your responsibilities. There's always that balance, but it's always worth pursuing. Definitely check out this podcast, and definitely check out Voltz's work too. I'm also going to see if I can link your full album, which is Cowboy, Galactic Cowboy?
Galactic Cowboys, yeah.
I got it right. Yep. Which is amazing, by the way. I'm going to try to link that in the description. It's a Spotify, but I'm going to do my best to see if it will link into descriptions. But if you don't, Spotify, Galactic Cowboy, definitely do that.
Yeah, I think the whole thing's on YouTube as well. So
yeah,
there you go.
Oh, I'm going to link that down below. It's in YouTube, so I can definitely link that. With that said, any other thoughts before we move on to our next section? I don't think so. I'm going to take the silence as
nope.
Yeah. All right.
Good.
So let's just move on to our final section.
Coffee time.
So every single week here on the Games and Groceries podcast, we like to talk about a gaming industry topic, whether it be about female gamers or even, like today, the importance of game music. So we have here today, of course, we just interviewed him, Voltz Supreme, who is going to be composing the soundtrack and the score of Adam's Ascending, which we had Nick DiPaolo on. Link up here. But with that said, I said a soundtrack and a score, but I think it's important to define the difference between a game's soundtrack or even a film's soundtrack versus its score. So let's start with our guest. What would you define the differences between those two?
I think a soundtrack can be a score, but a score is not. No, score's the soundtrack. No, this is confusing. You might have two albums come out of a film or something like that. If there's a soundtrack and a score, the soundtrack's generally the collection of songs that we used in the film, and then a score is the actual. You've got the one composer who's scored all the cues and stuff throughout the whole film. So that's my best attempt at trying to describe that. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
So to me, I think the score would be the music in the background that tells you how you're supposed to be feeling.
Did you say the soundtrack is?
No, the score.
A score, yes.
And then the soundtrack is more it's still like the music, but it's like a different. Usually the soundtrack is like the music that they play in the end credits or like cut scenes or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just it. It's like I like to think of not the best example, but I feel like the easiest, because most of our audience is really into Life is Strange. Before the storm, Life is Strange Before the Storm had the easiest depiction of a score and a soundtrack, because the soundtrack, like what Voltz said, is the collection of sometimes licensed songs, but most of the time it's just
songs that were used.
Yeah, they are in tracks. They're I don't want to say trackable, but it's just a collection of
the ones
songs
with words usually.
So that's your basic soundtrack. We have from Speedy Ortiz and other artists that contributed to the whole game. But Daughter scored Before the Storm because you have environmental, emotional sounds, just to depict what's going on in each scene. Whereas a soundtrack is where,
it's the songs that they used.
Yeah. Am I on track, Voltz?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yep.
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about, is that the game's music, there's all different kinds, but generally speaking, there's the soundtrack and then the score, which is making you more emotional, but the soundtrack can also make you emotional too.
Yeah.
But moving forward with that, how do some players take music for granted in games, right? Like you can almost ignore it. I
can answer that.
Okay.
Because I usually don't notice that stuff is there.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, looking back, there was music in the background that told me how I was supposed to be feeling in that scene. And I think that's how people take it for granted, is that they don't notice it's there. They notice that they feel something, but they don't notice that it's the music in the background that's making them feel like this is a tense scene or this is an emotional scene.
Okay, yeah. I can see that.
Because I know I don't really notice the background music until you're like, wow, this sounds really good. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's like, can you feel this? No.
I'm just like, no, I'm paying attention to what they're talking about.
Yeah. But what do you think, Joel? I keep going back and forth, Joel and Voltz. But yeah.
Yeah, I think generally, when you're writing music to a film and a game, depending on the game, but yeah, you don't want the music to necessarily stand out. You just want it to do its job.
Okay.
Games are a little bit different in that you have some games which are a bit more like a film where the music is just, driving your emotions, that kind of thing. But you've also got games where the music has to be like really interesting and exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's looping continuously for the entire level.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be like Mega Man or something like that. All the Mega Man games got really famous soundtracks, and people love those soundtracks. It kind of is part of the game because you're just jumping around shooting things, and you need that lift. And I know Sonic the Hedgehog, all the Sonic games, they had like amazing music, which wasn't just setting the scene. It was like you humming along to these cool songs while you're playing this game. So I think it's a bit of both. Sometimes the music has to hide, and other times you really want it to jump out and just slap the person in the face.
Yeah. I like how you brought up Mega Man, because when we were at Long Island Retro Expo, we actually stayed behind for some band called Bit Brigade. Good job, Adam's brain. But they actually did the whole score of Mega Man 3 while there was a person just sitting there speed running through the game. So as he was playing the game,
wow.
They were playing the soundtrack. It was so cool.
It was so cool. But it really made you think about, like what you said, you're humming along to it. Like without it, it's just like what you said, jumping around and shooting pixels.
Yeah.
But it was just because of the music, it felt more in your face, slapping your face. I can also answer that I take some music granted for games. The easiest I think we can all agree on is Untitled Goose Game.
Oh my goodness. I have been hearing about this game for the past week. He will not shut up about this Untitled Goose Game.
It is perfection until Adam's Ascending comes out. It is perfection.
Oh,
it is the yardstick for Goose Games. But what's really interesting about Goose Games, Untitled Goose Games,
sound ridiculous.
Score. Well, I'm being serious about this.
I know, but you just sound ridiculous.
Joel, did you get a chance to play Untitled Goose Game yet?
No, all I've seen is a couple of trailers and a goose walking around stealing people's stuff and biting bums and stuff.
I mean, that's the entire game. But it's really cool because the whole score of the game is just a piano. There's no drums or trumpet or anything. It's just that background piano. So anytime you bite somebody's bum, the music gets a little bit more tense because the person notices you. And it almost feels like a silent film in that way. Or back in the day, as if I had lived back then.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But where it was just every single piano note was either super tense, super happy, super joyful, but it was just the piano to set the mood. And I think players can take that game for granted because they don't notice that singular piano.
Yeah.
Because they want something that slaps you in the face.
Yeah.
But which is why Goose Game is up there for my game of the year of this year so far.
Do you guys have Play School over there?
Play School? Oh, like the company?
Kids show.
No.
So in Australia, we got this really popular kids program called Play School.
Yeah.
So you've got two actors which just, do craft and typical kids kind of show. But I don't know if you can hear my kids screaming in the background.
That's fine, man.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
But they've got just a piano player that's just off screen, and he just plays through the entire thing. So they might, go, it's getting windy, and they do some wind things, and then he does this amazing thing on the piano,
cool.
and it's actually really impressive. Like, That's what that reminded me of. But you can easily take the piano in Play School for granted as well, although it's not a game.
Yeah. Well, still, like you said, like even like shows, if it's too simplistic, I'm putting air quotes here, too simplistic, you're just like, oh, it's just a fun little gag. But that's an art in of itself where just a single instrument takes the mood right there and then. Doesn't have to be this ginormous orchestra like in Skyrim, but it can be just a goose game with a piano in it. Or
out of the box.
Out of the box, my goodness. Do you have out of box in Australia?
Well, it's not on anymore.
I can't think.
It ended in 2004.
Yeah. Well, what we can agree on, I believe the Wiggles came out of Australia.
Yes.
Yeah, they got that.
There you go. I hated the Wiggles. They creeped me out.
Oh, well, I appreciated the Wiggles.
I was too old for them, so by the time they came out, I was like, who are these guys? This is creepy.
Yeah. As Americans, I would like to thank you for the Wiggles. We very much appreciated that contribution. But totally.
It's my pleasure.
But I mean, I feel like a lot of players can take music just for granted. One, because they don't know how to define it or even appreciate the artist. You had an artist in mind that really inspired you with games and game music, but they can't even really name a famous artist. And even myself, I'm testing myself right now. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Wait, Voltz Supreme. Got it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. But I can't really think of one.
Look, I'm thinking, I don't really think it matters for gamers. Like, a gamer just has to enjoy their experience, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I get more frustrated with game developers who don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, there's a huge chunk of the game which they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just slap this on and I'm like, no, you gotta think about this. This is a major point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I see so many good games with terrible soundtracks, and it's just it's frustrating.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, like, I don't think gamers think about the music, but I think when they say, like, this game is so stupid, like, oh, I hate this game, I think a lot of the time it could be the music. Like, like if the music is wrong for it, or if it was like you said, a second thought for the development or developers, it could, if there was different music, you never know, people could have liked the game more with
because
music.
There's just something missing from it.
Or it feels off or wrong.
Yeah. And I like what you said, that developers don't give it enough credit. Because gamers don't... Yeah, some developers. Definitely not Nick DiPaolo. He doesn't take it for granted at all. Great guy. Great developer. But that's just it. It can't be just thrown, just second thought into a game.
Oh, yeah, we need music for this.
Yeah. And I'm almost thinking that, and you can say your take on this too, but I feel like it needs to be a part of the development, kind of mixed in with it, not just kind of, oh, here's our game, there it is, write it. But it needs to be almost molded within a development. Now, you yourself are, again, saying this again, shout out to Adam's Ascending, wishlist is on Steam, but you are also working on a game. What is your take on molding it in with the development?
Yeah, it does depend on the game. I think certain games, simple games, you could probably just slap on music at the end. Like, you could slap on good music at the end.
Yeah.
And there's no real need to have the composer be part of the process. Like, if you got a game with a story and that kind of thing, I would ideally want to be involved, me personally.
Oh, yeah.
All the way through. Especially, I'm interested in story writing and stuff like that, so I would like to, I try not to overstep my boundaries, but I like to give suggestions to do with the game story or to do with just other elements and that kind of thing. And especially if you're going to do like a dynamic soundtrack. That's kind of hard to tag on the end. Oh, maybe. But, you want to be talking with the developer and say, bouncing off each other, basically.
Yeah.
It could go on forever about that. But
yeah. How much communication per week do you and Nick have when developing music for the game?
It depends. Like, I haven't been talking much lately because, he's been busy with work and stuff like that. But he will often, beginning of a week, he might say, this is the next scene I'm working on. Can you come up with something for this? And he'll give me a paragraph of what's going on, the emotions he wants to feel, or he wants the gamer to feel. Then I'll just go off and make something.
Yeah.
And send it back to him, and then he'll either say, yep, this is great, or it's not quite what I had in mind. So then I'll go back and redo it. So some weeks we might be talking every day, other weeks we might just be once a week kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
It all depends, because like you said, you have a full-time job too. I forgot to ask Nick this. Does he also have a full-time job?
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Yeah. So it totally depends. And I think I just saw on Instagram that he his wife just got the news that she's having twins, which is absolute insanity. I can't even imagine.
I think Adam would collapse.
I would. But yeah, and that's awesome to hear that you and Nick are just in that kind of communication, that Nick is giving you like all of these scenes, and I like the feedback from that. Would you say, like, to be completely honest, like I know music, or like I don't know as much music as you do, obviously, but as a former musician trying to get back into it, whenever I got criticisms, it almost felt personal, and I don't know why. Was there ever a time where Nick sent you something back and it was full-hearted, but it kind of felt personal to you when he didn't like your tracks?
He usually does like my tracks. I think the very first trailer, or like before we did any game music, his live action trailer, that had basically two versions as far as the music goes. And I thought the first version was pretty good. Like, and he didn't say it was bad, but he said it doesn't have the energy that I'm looking for. I need something more like this. Yeah. And so I wasn't offended, but it was, it's a bit disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But generally what happens is, when that happens, if he says it's not quite what I want, I'll go back and make something that's like 10 times better anyway. So in the end, it's like, oh, I'm glad you actually pushed me to go in a different direction. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come up with something that at least we think was better.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I corresponded with you about making the new intro for the podcast, which some podcast listeners might take the podcast intros for granted, I don't know, but I even corresponded with you just like, hey, I'm looking for our current intro, but also our E3 episodes, and kind of combine them. And you're just like, oh, Adam, I've got something that you don't even know is coming, and I'm going to put Groceries into it, make it a grocery. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but let's hear it. And then the very first song you give me, I'm like, how did you do that? Like, that was, by the way, if you listen to that's I didn't send anything back. He just sent it. I was like,
we're like, perfect, done, thanks.
I was like, wow, this guy. But like I said, Nick really just said like, oh, wait till you hear his tracks. I'm like, yeah. But it's really cool that to hear something like that, kind of like that relationship. But bringing it back to game music, right? I feel like I might be crazy when I say this, but when we talk about gamers who are taking everything for granted, we talked a little bit about Mega Man 3 and how it needs that punch, right? I feel like a game's score is its flavor, right? And if you don't put flavor on your chicken, right, it just becomes bland. It's just a piece of chicken.
It doesn't become bland. It just is bland.
It's just bland, right? If you don't put it on the Barbie.
You're so stupid.
I tried to be Australian. Did I fail at being Australian?
Yes.
Do you say
put a shrimp on the Barbie?
Yeah.
Slap a shrimp on the Barbie,
said
mate.
it like an American. You said Barbie, like the doll.
Yeah, I don't know. But if you just have it there, but it's just the seasoning, it's the flavor, and that's what gives that chicken everything about it, right? The chicken is what matters. The chicken's going to give you your protein.
I feel like you're forgetting what you're talking about.
I'm also hungry and tired, but I think that a game's music. Yeah, right. I'm imagining chicken. Wait for it on the Barbie. Did I do it?
Why are you looking at me?
You sounded a bit more English that time, I think.
Damn.
Adam is really bad at accents. He'll start with Australian and end in Jamaican. Like, it's wrong.
I think people generally start with an accent and end up sounding Indian. I think.
Oh, really?
Oh, he does that too.
happens.
Yeah. So I just veer away from accents.
Anyway.
But yeah, would you say that a game's music is its flavor? Or would you put another metaphor to that? What do you think, Voltz?
Well, obviously I'm biased when it comes to all this kind of stuff.
Well, true, yeah. It is the chicken.
I'll play a game just because it has a good soundtrack. Like, and I won't play a game if it's got a bad soundtrack.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think like since you have that musical mind, that makes sense that like that's how you kind of judge a game too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
But other people definitely don't think the same way.
Like I base a lot of things on emotion, so like
if it's not emotional, then
if it doesn't have this, if it makes me feel a certain way, I'm like, no.
Yeah. See, I like what you say that you won't really play a game that doesn't have a good soundtrack. That's the way I read comics. Like I'll see a comic on the stand. Very first thing I'll do, I'll open up a random page and I just want to see the art style. Like if it has
so judgy of art.
Yeah, if I can't vibe with the art style of the comic, no, won't even read the story.
Video games too, though.
Yeah, if a video game doesn't have good art style, for some reason it bugs me. I don't know why. You know what game has a good art style to it? Untitled Goose Game.
Oh my goodness.
Has an amazing art style to it. But
you're not allowed to bring that up for the next week. Like I will give you money to not bring it up for the next week.
Well, we share the same bank account, so it goes to me anyway. But
we'll borrow money from someone to give to you.
Wow. But yeah, like Liz, did you ever think about music being the flavor of the game?
I mean, I think so because, like I said earlier, it tells you what to feel. So when you think of like the overall music of a video game or a movie, it kind of sets that tone for the whole thing. Like when I think of Life is Strange, the first season, I feel that mellow because all the music in there is mellow, except for the random times where like Chloe's playing her music.
Right.
But a lot of the time it's very mellow, soothing music. Even in season 2, it's the same vibe. Yeah. And so I think the music definitely is what you call the flavor of it because it kind of sets that tone for like, this is the feel of this. Like it's intense, but it's also like zen.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Yeah, Voltz, do you have anything to add on that?
Not really. I think, I agree with both of what you've said. So
yeah, let me ask you because you said that like if a game has a bad soundtrack to it, what kind of goes through your head? Because the gameplay could be spot on, the story is emotional, everything about it is fantastic except for the music. And I want to ask you, like, about your kind of mindset when it comes to those kinds of games. What goes through your head when you play a game that just has a bad soundtrack?
Oh gosh, how do I answer that? Well, first of all, it's pretty subjective.
Mm-hmm.
A bad soundtrack to me might not even be a bad soundtrack. It might just be
agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very well done soundtrack that I just don't find interesting.
Yeah.
So a lot of fantasy games have these big, massive orchestral soundtracks that are, some of them are done by film composers and stuff, and I just don't find it interesting.
Really?
I'm not going to say, I can't say they're bad, but I just I would love something a bit more, like the Goose Game, just something. Put some limitations on and see what you can do with a couple of instruments. Like I don't know. I don't think I can really answer that. I can go the other way.
Okay.
So Final Fantasy 13. As far as the Final Fantasy game goes, it's pretty disappointing. Like the art style is good, the story's okay. It's a bit confusing, but people basically call it a corridor simulator.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what you think of when you think of a Final Fantasy game.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love the music so much that I kept playing that game. Just grinding through that game just to listen to the amazing music. And I still sometimes go back to it. Like I definitely haven't finished the game and I probably never will.
Yeah.
But the music carried me through that game.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just listen to the soundtrack without playing the game. But
that works.
Still, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like
that's an amazing soundtrack. It's all on Spotify and stuff now. I think Square's released all of their Final Fantasy albums.
I think that's Spotify. Right. Yeah. I really like the soundtrack for 10. 7 was okay, but I think on Spotify, like it came up 13. I remember liking that. Maybe it was 12, but I can't remember. But all of them were just fantastic. But I like what you said that. Did you say that big orchestral numbers kind of don't interest you if it's just too much?
Yeah. I mean, people love those soundtracks, but especially with movies and stuff. It just doesn't interest me.
No, I feel that. I mean, it goes into it's genres of music in games, right? Like I could ask you, like, are you into deathcore music in general?
No, definitely not. When I was in high school, I had a few years where I just listened to heavy metal.
Yeah,
just all I listened to.
Dang.
But I don't go back to much metal these days.
And that's like a music genre, right? Like I may not appreciate all sorts of music. Doesn't mean it's good. Doesn't mean it's bad. Because deathcore is amazing. But it's just tastes, right? Because a lot of people could argue with you, like, well, Voltz, like orchestral takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of emphasis. I'm sure it does. It just doesn't really go anywhere. I think you can even say like the difference between the soundtrack and the score of Skyrim or any Elder Scrolls game and Fallouts, from the same developers, two completely different soundtracks and two completely different tastes.
Yeah.
Right. Were you about to say something, Liz?
Oh, yeah. When it came to like the big orchestral and like you were talking about that, I was going to say like, because me and your other friend that we've interviewed, Marcus.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Love Wicked.
Yeah.
And what attracts me to Wicked is that big orchestra, how every song is just like booming music.
Yeah.
And I love it. I admire, like, that is one musical where I admire the music.
Yeah.
Whereas you listen, you're like, this is terrible.
Yeah, I can't.
And me and Marcus just want to punch you in the face for saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I love orchestral music.
Yeah.
Like, some favorite, Masashi Amazu, he writes lots of orchestral music. But it's the composers. It's the soundtracks that are like, all right, let's do another Hans Zimmer style soundtrack. And then everything, even though Hans Zimmer's great, because he's set this standard that everyone copies. I don't want to listen to any Hans Zimmer anymore because it just all sounds.
Everyone wants it,
which is unfortunate for him. But unfortunate in some ways, fortunate in other ways.
Yeah. True. I'm trying to think, like, because I remember you saying like a lot of big film industry music writers go into games. Has John Williams ever done a game? That'd be crazy.
I don't think so.
I don't think he did, but that'd be crazy.
I feel like you would know if he did.
I feel like I would know, and that would be amazing. But of course, John Williams being, Star Wars. I believe he did Harry Potter and also Jaws. He did so many different.
All the big ones.
Yeah, everything except
he's one of the biggest film composers of all time.
Yeah, I mean everything except for Lord of the Rings, which everybody thinks that he did. Is like
because he did Harry Potter, he did Star Wars.
Yeah,
you complete the trifecta with Lord of the Rings.
Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's just like it's all about music genres.
Mm-hmm.
For me, even I would say some of my favorite soundtracks is from Oxenfree, in this game called Hue, which
Amazing.
Oxenfree, the soundtrack for that.
Yeah,
by Scientific. That was. I started to watch a documentary of how he did everything, and he had these old timey radios just to like mess with them. He looked like a madman in his basement, just like playing with these little radios. But I can't remember his real name.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, like, but Oxenfree's music is just very atmospheric. I don't want to say that it's not synthwave at all. I don't know how to describe it, but it's very atmospheric.
But there's got synth in there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. What was that?
Oh, there's a lot of it's pretty synth heavy, the whole soundtrack.
Oh yeah, it's definitely synth heavy. And definitely Hue is that singular piano, but it's not in the same way as Goose Game. But is again very atmospheric piano, And now the more I'm thinking about it, I'm starting to agree with Voltz. It's like the bigger it is, it's not that it doesn't interest me.
I think it depends on the game. It's not like you wouldn't want a big orchestra for Untitled Goose Game.
No, that'd be weird.
But for something like Skyrim, it really fits because it's that like dark medieval type.
Yeah.
And it'd be the same thing. You wouldn't want a big orchestra for Life is Strange.
Yeah.
Because that's more of a mellow game.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it works for something. I can't think of another game right now.
No, true.
But it fits for Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the feel of the game or the show or movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, how can we better ourselves to be more appreciative of music in games? Is there a way we can be more appreciative of that, or is this just kind of like understand where music is coming from? Voltz, what's your take on that? How can we be more appreciative?
You can listen to some video game music podcasts. There's quite a few pretty good ones. So I listen to the Mikado brothers. So they're a bit more analytical. They'll play a song, they'll talk about it. They're both, the two brothers are composers, so they will talk about it from a composer's point of view. And they've gone through a lot of albums that I wouldn't really be interested in, but because they have because they're so interested in it and they have that analytical approach to their podcast, I've gone away thinking, oh wow, that soundtrack is quite amazing. And there's a VG Embassy is another good one, which is more they'll play the music and then talk more about the game rather than the actual music itself. But they're two good podcasts, which I find I get a better appreciation for video game music as a whole rather than just the soundtracks that I like.
Oh yeah, totally. Because it all is about fitting into each scene that I would hope not, but each music soundtrack isn't an accident. It is just put into a game and you just kind of throw into the game. It's intentional. It's made to flavor the scene. It's made to, it's made to make you more emotional and emotionally connected to that scene, I believe. And I feel like a game without any music, zero music, I don't think can quite work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of any kind of game. The only way a video game without music can work is maybe if it's trying to creep you out and trying to like make you feel uneasy. But even then, there's like the subtle musical chimes that come in to make you feel a little bit uneasy, right? But I feel like a game without music.
I feel like because you
work.
asked originally, how can people appreciate it more?
Right.
But I think the reason that like the three of us notice music in games and movies is because we're all musical minded.
Right.
But if you're someone who's not even artistically minded or musically minded, you might not even notice it's there, but people would notice if it's not there.
Okay, yeah.
Because like I said before, it goes back to the music tells you how to feel, tells you what that emotion is supposed to be in that scene, and people will notice when that music isn't there. Because like you look at like really bad movies that were kind of thrown together, they usually don't have light music in the background.
Right.
And you can tell because it makes that scene that much weirder.
I can see that. Voltz, what do you think? Can a game without music either creep you out or can it even work at all?
Yeah, I put music to everything. If I'm cooking, I'm listening to music. Sometimes if I go for a walk, I'll put music on. It just makes everything so much better.
Yeah.
But I did think of. Have you guys ever played the original Prince of Persia? The 2D platforming game.
But back in the day when it first came out. So, wait, the 2D platformer?
Yeah.
Wait, what system was it on?
DOS.
Oh, never mind. Maybe I'm thinking of like when it was on like the original Xbox and PS2 era. I thought that was the first one.
No, this is old school. Like I would play this when I was in preschool. Basically, you put the floppy disk into the computer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that game.
See, you're still young.
Yeah, still young. Right on.
The original Prince of Persia is basically silent. You've got an opening musical track, and then pretty much the whole game is void of any music, except for, like you said, those little musical chimes.
Yeah.
So you might start a level that goes diddle-dun.
Yeah.
Oh, you die, and some little musical sound comes on, but that's one of my favorite games of all time, and that doesn't have much music in it.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think a lot of people complained about what's the new Zelda game? Not the
Breath of the Wild
remake. Yeah, Breath of the Wild. So I know people are pretty split on that. So
yeah,
I've heard people say, "Oh, the silence is great." Like it just, I don't know. I haven't played it, so it helps you appreciate the environment or something like that. And then other people are like, there should be more music in here. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So that's a game that has divided people.
It really has. It's really weird for a really crazy dynamic game. But Liz, you're playing it currently right now.
Yeah, I was actually trying to think this whole time. I was like, is there music in that?
In Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, because I was trying to think, and there isn't. But I think I don't notice it because there's still environmental noises.
Yeah, like birds chirping and...
There's birds chirping, you can hear wind, you can hear, like, Link running.
And going, ah!
Yeah.
Yeah, Link just does that all the time.
You can hear, like, the monsters, like, making their, like, calling noise, or, like, you can hear them around their fire, you can hear the fire. So I think that's why you don't notice there's no music, because there's still environmental noises. It's not, like, void of all sound.
But I think there is there's definitely a soundtrack. Like there's probably a few hours worth of music in the game.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's those moments of silence that have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of
there's some great music from it.
What's that?
Oh, there's some. I've listened to the soundtrack and it's got some amazing music in there.
Yeah.
I'll have to listen to that, but Yeah, I was actually going to say that one of my biggest complaints about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I know a lot of people are complaining to me, like, why do you like Odyssey? I'm like, well, here's one of my reasons. It just feels void. Like there's not so much environmental sounds. There's not a lot of soundtrack to it compared to the other Assassin's Creed games. Whereas Assassin's Creed Origins, which came before it, there was people in the market. There was bird chirping. There was just a more powerful soundtrack. Odyssey feels void of that, and it just bugs me. It makes me cringe. I need something. I mean, really. I mean, it's not like environmental like Goose Game is.
Oh my goodness.
There's so much going on in Goose Game that I can't even describe to you right now because you haven't played it yet. You gotta play Goose Game.
I'm playing Breath of the Wild. Yeah,
well, Goose Game. But I think this is a good conversation. Yeah. Voltz, do you have anything to add? I don't want to take up any more of your time if you're in a rush.
No, I'm not in a rush.
Yeah, but
no, I don't have anything to add to that point anyway.
Oh yeah, true that. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else because like I think our bottom line for this entire conversation about music in games is that it does play a vital role in game development. You can't just slap it in at the last minute because it does have that importance. And even there's genres within games, right? You can't just have music game. You can't just have game music. There's different types. There's orchestral, there's environmental, there's emotional. There's so many different elements and layers to game music. And I feel like, yeah, sure, maybe if you're a type of gamer that isn't really driven towards game music, the video game music, right? If you're not driven towards that, you can at least still appreciate that it's there more, right? Don't take it for granted and just enjoy what you have.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense at all? Or am I just off in the ether somewhere?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. Liz, what do you have to add in terms of final points?
I don't really have anything to add. I mean, I pretty much said the same thing.
Oh, yeah. True.
Music matters.
Music does matter. I'm going to make that into a t-shirt. But
if you get me the Cricket Explorer Air 2, I can make it into a t-shirt.
I could. I really could. Yeah. Voltz, do you have anything to add to this final statement of mine?
No, not really. I kind of like what I said before. I don't necessarily think people have to notice the music. If the music does its job, and I think that's a good enough thing.
Yeah.
I think if the music if it's good enough and it's a certain type of music, it'll naturally, you'll have songs that people have put on YouTube which get like millions of views and everyone's talking about this song or that song.
Man.
I think it just kind of happens naturally. Like, think of all the Final Fantasy orchestra concerts that they do and stuff. Like, people will go to a concert to listen to Final Fantasy music, and I think. But yeah, from a developer's point of view, I think developers need to, especially indie developers. There's a lot out there. I remember when I was, you scroll through all the devlogs and stuff that people are making, and they're not even really thinking about the music. Obviously, they've got all the stuff that they need to worry about. But as a composer myself, I'm just like, come on, you got to get you can do something really interesting with this game. And they settled for boring stuff, or they did it themselves and they weren't very good composers.
Yeah, right. No, I can think of a couple that I'm not going to name on air at all. But as soon as you were talking like about indie games and making really good music, immediately thought of the soundtrack for Celeste. And it's a gorgeous soundtrack. That's beautiful soundtrack. But again, it's another music genre though.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally can't wait to hear the music behind Adam's Ascending. And I can't wait to hear the documentary of Voltz Supreme playing with old radios down in his basement. So, but yeah, we really can't wait for that.
Old synthesizers for me.
All synthesizers. No old-timey radios. Got to be the synthesizers.
There you go.
Good job, Adam's brain. But yeah, I mean, we really liked having you on. We really liked this subject about game music. And we really appreciate, by the way, we very much appreciate the new intro to the podcast. Again, the other thing I'm going to have linked down below is Voltz Supreme's Instagram. I'm crediting him to the intro music as well as the outro music. And I want to link his Instagram down below. And I'm also going to be putting his album, Galactic Cowboy, which is on YouTube, down in the description, because I want you to really hear this guy's music, really appreciate what he's doing, and just to, again, to give credit to the artist. That's the other thing. Going to end it here. Always give credit to your artists. Always, always, always. Don't just take people's art and just say it's your own. Credit the artist, man. But I know Voltz is full of ingredients of that. Don't steal his music and just make it your own. It's wrong, man. I mean, he's from Australia. What's that?
I've got lots of music available for indie developers on like asset stores and stuff like that. You can people can buy a whole soundtrack for like $25 is my most expensive soundtrack.
There you go.
All the Western music.
Yeah.
So.
But I think what you're trying to say is that if they tried to pirate your music, you're going to sick koalas on them. Is what I'm trying to gather.
Yes, they might get a large moving package in the mail.
Large moving package. Well, I think we'll end our conversation here. Voltz, anything to add? I'm going to give the red carpet to you. You've got an Instagram. You've got a new album out. Anything else that I'm missing?
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And no, I don't know. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no worries. I love your guys' podcast. You get some nice, interesting topics and interesting point of views that I don't really hear anywhere else. So,
thank you, man.
Yeah.
Love what you guys do. And, thank you for having me on and the honor of making your intro and outro music. Are you using the outro one or?
Yeah, you sent me one or two, I believe. Yeah. And then I'm going to use like just a little bit for the outro. I think we corresponded about that. I don't know. But,
anyway.
Yeah. Whatever you do. But yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah. But yeah, so I lost my train of thought.
We're ending now.
We are ending. But definitely give Voltz Supreme some love down the Instagrams, YouTube channel, his album. Definitely check all those out. And again, you can follow us on social medias, Twitter @Gaming Groceries. You can follow us on Instagram, Games and Groceries, all one word. Check out our website, gamesandgroceries.com, where you can listen to all the podcasts from the website, as well as find out where you can listen to the audio versions of the website. And with that very much said and done, I think we can finally end this. I'm tired.
Alrighty.
It's tomorrow for you, Voltz. So, Voltz, have a good day. We'll have a good night, which is weird, by the way. Anyways, so thanks again for listening to this week's episode. We will catch you next week. Have a good week.
Bye.
Cheerio.